Continuing with the Waza of Kashiwazaki and Tate Shiho Gatame, commonly known as the mount.
縦四固めについて説明します。この技は自分のバランスを取るのは非常に難しい技です。しかし、
This osaikomi technique is very effective once you master it, but it's difficult to learn how to maintain your balance. Learning stability in this particular osaikomi waza is difficult. But once you do, it is a very effective osaikomi technique.
このバランスを回復すると非常に効果的な技の抑え技の一つです。縦四固めの上半身の決め方はいろんな方法があります。
There are various ways of controlling your opponent's upper body in Tate Shiho Gatame. For example, you can bundle him up in what people know as an arm triangle or a kata gatame type position.
このように決めるのがあります。あるいは相手の首を抱え、自分の帯を持つ。このように。
Or you can wrap up in a half Nelson type position and grab your own belt. You can't really see that because of the way he's facing the camera, but he's grabbing his own belt with his right hand.
決める場合もあります。しかし私はいろんな技に変化しやすいという理由で、この形を進めます。
What he recommends is to grab the belt as he's been doing all along, taking that same grip over the shoulder and on the belt, just as he does with Yoko Shiho and Kami Shiho. And the reason for that is because it enables you to shift smoothly between all three osaikomi techniques. You can shift fairly smoothly from Tate Shiho to Yoko Shiho to Kami Shiho back to Tate Shiho, and so on. And then you underhook his arm. And then you maintain your balance by posting with your hand, in this case his left, and your foot. And now as you see, if you've studied Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you recognize the positioning of his head and the positioning of his hand. Usually you want your head on the same side as the hand that you're using to post and stabilize. So in this case, his head is on the side of his opponent's right ear. In this case, his head is on the side of his opponent's right ear, and so that's where he's going to be posting with his hand, or perhaps I'm reversing the order. If your supporting hand, if the hand you're posting with to maintain your balance is your left hand, then you want your head on the side of his right ear. You see how close his, the head and the hand don't have to be that close. But you get the idea that you want your head on the same side of his head where your supporting hand is. Because of the way his head is positioned, even though he has his arm deep underneath his opponent's shoulder, even though he can get his arm trapped underneath his opponent's body, because of the way he's positioned, because of the way his head is positioned, and because he has a hand and a foot to post with, chances are he's not going to get reversed, because you just post with that hand, and you're not pushing up with it like you do with a push-up. If he tries to bridge you off, you're going to post and push back into your base, into your hips.
この形は横四固めにも、あるいは横四固めからのさらに崩れ上四固めにも変化するに便利です。下半身の決め方ですが、
So now talking about controlling the lower body.
これは相手の動きに応じて変化させます。
Now, if you have longer legs, you don't necessarily need longer legs, but it tends to be advantageous if you do. And that, of course, is to grapevine him if he tries to bridge. In the early UFCs, you saw Royce Gracie doing that a lot. See right there. Hooking your insteps there on your opponent's shins or insteps. And me personally, I would arch my hips down rather than allowing my hips to kind of float up in the air like he is.
このように足を絡んで攻めます。また、はい、 相手の腰の後ろでこのように足を組む。
And now another commonly used tactic is you're just going to scissor your feet there underneath your opponent's rear end and then post your feet on the ground. And that severely limits his bridging and any kind of motion that he might try to make with his hips, trying to shrimp out or shift around. This control, in my experience, has been very effective.
腰を制することも可能です。またもう一つ、相手が斜めに意識したものです。
Now, if he tries to bridge you, here's some techniques that he uses to defend against the bridge. So one defense is simply to go ahead and post. I would be uncomfortable putting my head on the ground like that. I just feel like it would be easier to bridge me off. But you post with your hand and perhaps with your head. And now look at his right leg and also the space underneath his opponent's back. What he's going to do is he's going to wedge his right thigh underneath his opponent's back here.
右足を曲げて相手の
And then he hooks his heels underneath he hooks that heel underneath his opponent's rear end. And now you go ahead and push back, and you're lifting your opponent off the ground a little bit, as you can see. So he's kind of he's elevated off the ground with your heel underneath his keister, and you're lifting his neck off the ground with your armpit there. And of course posting with the hand to help maintain your balance. And now he's very, very limited as far as his possible escapes. If you're going to use this general type of pinning technique in wrestling, it's difficult because you have to have your opponent's back actually on the ground, at least in folk-style wrestling, in order to score points. That's my understanding. I could be wrong. It's been a long time since I participated in that as a competitor and a coach. But here, all you got to do is hold your opponent for the required number of seconds. So you're scissoring or sandwiching really his armpit and his head with your armpit and your thigh. There's a very powerful osaikomi here. As you can see, he's severely limited in his motion. Also notice how his neck is cranked over. So it's common because it is difficult to maintain your balance in this osaikomi if you don't know how to do it, if you don't have a lot of experience with it. And so you need to have some sort of follow-up in case your opponent does bridge and threaten to reverse you. So if he's bridging on this side, if he's bridging in this case over his right shoulder, you go ahead and release that grip on his belt, and then you wrap his arm and grab your own belt, and then you go into a Juji Gatame type position. So we'll see that again. You see how his opponent attempts to bridge, and then he shifts his grip to what we call in wrestling a whizzer or an overhook. Grab your own belt, and then you shift into a Juji Gatame position. He doesn't describe this technique in very elaborate detail. Now, if he tries to bridge on the side of his free arm here, and you happen to have this kind of control with the grip on the belt, it's easy to shift into Juji Gatame from here if he tries to bridge over his left shoulder. Post the hand, shift around, and there's Juji Gatame.